This is the Sonic Truth Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Alan Seslowsky from RotoWire.com, along with the Podfather and Theo Gremminger, both of Player Profiler, and we are set to talk about all things Dynasty. We're going to talk some FFPC, but first, guys, I'm going to start with you, Theo. This whole Brock Purdy is our starting quarterback, Trey Lance Dynasty value. As the Podfather, Trey Lance needs a dynasty ranking update today. Let's parse out. First, just give us the one-line version of what's changed with Trey Lance's value as it relates to Kyle Shanahan's comments.
Self-sabotage would be my short comment about it. It's self-sabotage by Shanahan because he, in one foul swoop, buries Trey Lance's dynasty value and lowers his NFL trade value to build up Brock Purdy and to build up, the chances of journeyman Sam Darnold. It is such a dumb decision for Shanahan to put this out in the open. It's inexplicable, to be honest with you, and it's very bad for Trey Lance in Dynasty, right, Matt?
Podfather, you cannot take this guy in the second round of Dynasty Superflex startups as everyone's jumping into these drafts right now, right? I mean, that's off the table.
I mean, Shanahan is a megalomaniacal idiot. This is the problem. And these kinds of coaches, they may be super smart, and he may be able to coach up that stretch zone running scheme better than anybody else, okay? And he may be able to train seventh-round picks to go through the read progressions and hit the best weapons that are available to any quarterback in the league with efficiency. But they will ultimately be their own undoing because Shanahan also knows how smart Shanahan is. And that attitude, that ego, will ultimately be his undoing, and this is what's happening. He just thinks he can just say anything, right? It doesn't matter. He's Shanahan. Whatever. It's all about him and his relationship with Trey Lance trying to motivate him. That's what this is all about. Instead of taking a step back about what's in the best interest of the organization. I don't think that Kyle Shanahan thinks about that. I think he thinks about Kyle Shanahan. That's what he's thinking about. He's thinking about, well, I'm having a difficult time reaching Trey Lance. So I'm going to go ahead and cost the organization millions and millions of dollars and cost the roster talent in the future in whatever trade for Trey Lance ultimately happens, because now Trey Lance is going to get traded. Now that we know this, most teams hide this information from us. So we as dynasty managers don't know that Trey Lance may not be in the league for very long. If Trey Lance is not showing up to the facility, if Trey Lance is not putting the work in, given that he has like one full season with North Dakota State, and it's frustrating his head coach to this degree that he'll sabotage the organization in order to try to motivate this guy. This is a major red flag. It's a major red flag for anyone that has Trey Lance or thinking about drafting Trey Lance, and it's just a reminder that no matter how smart you are as a coach, when it becomes about you, then it's at the detriment of the organization.
Yeah, I just think that with Trey Lance, though, it's like they have investment in him. Is it time now, Theo, to divest of that and understand that it's a sunk cost as far as what they paid versus what value they're going to squeeze out of him?
In a perfect world, yes, they would be moving on. But my question for you both is, if they had these sort of regrets about, drafting Trey Lance and having Trey Lance as a potential starter this year, why would they go after Sam Darnold as the quarterback competition? And I think it kind of speaks a little bit to what Matt talked about with Shanahan is one of the most arrogant maniacs in the entire league.
You know why? Because he thinks he can fix him. That's why. He can fix him. That's why. This is the ego on Kyle Shanahan is unmatched. Maybe in all of professional sports. You have to go to like Jose Mourinho, right?
Yes, that's Fantastic.
That's where you have to go to find. And guess what? Guess how many championships Kyle Shanahan has won as a head coach. Can you guys guess? Guys. Now, I know there's a lot of numbers out there that you can throw out. Is there a number you could guess of the number of championships that Kyle Shanahan has secured for his franchise? Do you guys know the number?
Certainly a lot less than the chosen one, Jose Mourinho, Matt.
Right, which makes it all the more galling that he would have this ego, this undeserved arrogance. Now, it may work in the short term getting Trey Lance in the building to put the work in, but it also just destroyed his trade value, and certainly it's hurting his dynasty value. Next time any of you go to the dynasty rankings on Player Profiler, you're going to see Trey Lance lower than he was yesterday.
Hey Theo, do you think that the Sam Darnold signing has to do with maybe that both of these players, Purdy, well, we know about Purdy, and Lance aren't 100% yet, so at least there's someone that's only 25 years old that probably can operate in a system. He is, so is that maybe the Darnold, explain the Darnold contract?
Yeah, no, I mean, I get bringing in a QB because you're concerned about those two guys and you don't want to draft another young player to be in the mix with two other young players. But my question is the choice of Darnold when there was multiple quarterbacks they could have gone after this offseason that would have made more sense. I'll say, like, I'll go real low. Gardner Minshew would have made more sense than Sam Darnold. Like,
That's
you could have gone and got Minshew. We don't even need to talk about them, making things right with Jimmy Garoppolo and figuring out a way to bring him back, or going and getting a Derek Carr or some sort of a fill-in type quarterback. You could have literally gotten Gardner Minshew and felt a lot better at things than Darnold.
But like that kind of quarterback, Baker Mayfield, Gardner Minshew, does not work for Kyle Shanahan because they're too headstrong.
Yeah.
No, he needs
wants a robot Darnold.
A quarterback that has been fully, totally, and completely humbled. So then he will just do exactly what I say, because anything other than doing exactly what I say is not good enough for me, right? And this is why. I mean, Trey Lance is really talented. This is the great dilemma that Kyle Shanahan faces, is that he can't bring in players in leadership positions that are too talented, because then he'll lose control, right? He can't have Aaron Rodgers back there. Aaron Rodgers is going to want to call his own plays. He can't have that. Oh,
can't have that.
He must have a puppet. It's a puppet or bust, right? And Trey Lance is saying, maybe I don't really want to be a puppet. I want to do some things my way. I have a unique skill set. Only Josh Allen has a skill set like me, so maybe I'll do some things to improvise. And you improvise? Oh, you better not improvise. Oh, you better not.
Kyle Shanahan's record in the regular season is 52-46, guys. 52-46. I get it. He's done well in the postseason, 6-3 postseason record, but 52-46 for a guy who thinks he's the smartest man in the room, no matter what room he's in.
It doesn't matter what room. I mean, it's embarrassing what's happening. If you're the general manager, you're infuriated. I mean, John Lynch has one of the hardest jobs in the NFL, dealing with Kyle Shanahan when he was drafting Joe Williams. Think he wanted to draft him? No. Think he wanted to draft Trey Sermon? No, he didn't want to draft these guys. But he wanted to draft Mac Jones. Right? But he's like, you're incorrigible. Right? It's a deal with the devil that John Lynch has.
It's also, the Lynch does have that in the back of his mind, is that Mac Jones looks like a long-term NFL starter. And then there was the Trey Lance. So there's certainly a little bit of animus between those two guys, probably behind closed doors over this.
I don't know how anyone can get along with Kyle Shanahan if he's doing this, right? This is something that you never, ever see. It doesn't see the light of day, especially when you have a young, impressionable quarterback who is on the other side of this ego chasm, where he needs to be built up. He needs to be supported. You need to do the exact opposite of what you're doing. I mean, maybe in the short term, maybe he's going to get a little bit more feedback from Trey Lance, a little bit more engagement from Trey Lance than he was getting before. But this is a detrimental move in the long run for Trey Lance. It's detrimental to the organization. It's just classic Kyle Shanahan. This is what he does. This is who he is.
Yeah. Let's crowdsource this a little bit. So anyone listening in the live chat, anyone listening on the replay, just watching the YouTube video, I want you to put in the comments right now who will be the week 1 starter at the quarterback position for the San Francisco 49ers. Will it be Brock Purdy? Will it be Sam Darnold? Will it be Trey Lance? Or, guys, will the San Francisco 49ers make a trade for Lamar Jackson, who profiles as the typical type of quarterback that Kyle Shanahan's been after? So we'll start with Podfather this time. Is there a world, a situation a story we could tell ourselves where a contract, a sign and trade is done that brings Lamar over to the 49ers and sends Trey Lance to the Baltimore Ravens? And what does that do to the value of each of those guys, Podfather?
Only in fantasy football. We can fantasize about that. We can fantasize about that offense with Lamar and Kittle and Ayuk and Debo. It would be the perfect offense for Lamar Jackson. He can keep the ball in the intermediate areas, short, intermediate, run, short, intermediate, run, short, intermediate, run. That's what Lamar Jackson needs, yards after the catch. He does not need to be launching the ball downfield. That's not what he's best at. In fact, there's probably 40 quarterbacks in the league that are more accurate down the field than Lamar Jackson. Anyone that saw him at the Pro Bowl in the accuracy contest will tell you that. It was not pretty. But while it makes all the sense in the planet Earth you could ever imagine, you take all the sense and all the earth and you got it, right? There it is. It's Lamar to the 49ers. It ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen because of that ego. Lamar Jackson doesn't even have an agent. Lamar Jackson's a headstrong guy. Lamar Jackson likes to improvise. So this trade's not happening. But if you take the perfect trade chip in Trey Lance, right, an unproven mobile quarterback, dynamic quarterback, trading him for a proven one, a late first rounder, and what's in the box for what's in front of me, what we know, a proven MVP, that'd be a perfect fit for this particular team and this supporting cast. It makes all the sense in the world. So you're using logic, Alan. It's very logical what you're doing. If I were the general manager and I didn't have this evil gremlin of a coach to deal with, I would absolutely do that deal. But it can't happen because of Kyle.
Yeah, that one will not happen. And also, I will say that they have a lot of money invested in a bunch of their skill position players too, which kind of make giving one of these mega quarterback deals, a possibility for them. So, like, Debo's getting paid a lot, Kittle's getting paid a lot, McCaffrey's getting paid a lot. So they're a little bit, tied down by that if they were to put in one of these mega, $50 million a year type contracts for Lamar. But it certainly would be.
Their rosters on offense structured to have a rookie quarterback or a discount quarterback at the helm, surrounding him with the most premium weaponry you can. Adding an expensive quarterback to that wouldn't actually be feasible. It wouldn't even be able to be fit under the cap, or you wouldn't be able to balance the books unless you were to shed one of those big salaries from the skill position players, and then that kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a fun one to kind of think about. I think the better question is what teams could be looking at Trey Lance, because if you start looking at those teams in the back half of the first round that might have been a little bit boxed out by some of these, quarterbacks that are available to them in this draft class, you find some interesting kind of landing spots for Trey Lance. I think that's the bigger question now. Could there be a team kind of under the radar going after Lance? Our friend Memphis Young of the Dynasty Warzone, he threw out Tennessee as a potential landing spot to Trey Lance, trade a second rounder and maybe a future second. That would make a little bit of sense. Put him in the mix there with a Tannehill and a Willis, that you could see a path for him to gain some value there. but there's probably a number of them. Are there anybody that jumps out to you guys?
He can't be traded for a second rounder because he's on a rookie contract. I mean, it doesn't even make sense. Like, what are you going to get in the second? I like the idea of Tennessee, but I would think that it would have to be a late first rounder, or at least get a first, give back a third. He's just too valuable right now from a market trade perspective, Lance is, while he's on that rookie contract.
Yeah, and he's got the fifth-year options. There's additional team leverage there. This is a very valuable piece, which is all the more reason why you don't diminish it if you're Kyle Shanahan. You tarnish it for no reason. No reason except your own ego. It's crazy what he's doing. But I can say this. After those comments come out, the probability that Trey Lance finishes his rookie deal in San Francisco is low. And his current dynasty value is being propped up by that supporting cast, by the fact that he's on the 49ers, the fact that he was a third overall pick, that he has the Josh Allen raw skill set. Now, if he ultimately gets dealt, that is a huge uncertainty added to his lifetime value. And you're going to see a major discount of Trey Lance hitting our rankings and our lifetime value rating, as well as a lot of other ranking services. Because the moment you see a quarterback on his rookie deal traded, back through time, that has been a bad sign. It's not just that he's losing the supporting cast. It's a signal that an NFL team has given up on a player. Once an NFL team gives up on a player, oh boy, the probability that he's able to rebuild his value is very low.
You have to go to like historical situations to find them. Matt's exactly right on this. It's like once somebody moves on from you and you're supposed to be a young quarterback with talent, that is like the holy grail for NFL teams to be able to have. Like, you do not move on from a young quarterback with talent ever. You have to go back to like Brett Favre. There's a couple of historical situations. Yeah, you could find a couple of historical situations that kind of stand out, but it's a complete outlier. If Lance is traded, that's not the guy you want in Dynasty. You might have some short-term value for a season because of his rushing upside, but in terms of long-term value, it's gone if he's moved on.
Theo, does that also apply to the wide receiver position? Because right away, what popped in my mind was Elijah Moore. That's the middle of a rookie contract, a touted prospect, someone who more or less flashed. So now that he's traded during that rookie contract, team gives up on him. Should we apply that same thesis to the wide receiver?
Absolutely not. I think wide receiver is a position where in the NFL teams do move on at times. They definitely don't want to pay the second contract. We've seen multiple situations where that's been the case. And I do think sometimes you can see certain personalities don't mesh. Certain teams want to move on. We can all agree that Kadarius Toney gained value moving from New York to Kansas City in Dynasty. And I think it's similar with Elijah Moore. I think Elijah Moore lands into a situation where he's got a path to the number 2 target there. I think that it's exciting. Amari Cooper is a player we're comfortable with, but he's getting a little bit older. I think there's a chance for an Elijah Moore bounce back. I think it's a clear path for him. And I think for me, David Njoku has less of a path to being number 2 in targets in Cleveland this year. I think that's a bad bet to make. And I think it also limits kind of what Donovan Peoples-Jones is. He's been kind of a sleeper for many this offseason as a guy who's going to really spike this year. Elijah Moore, though, you've got to be very...
Donovan Peoples-Jones. This is Donovan Peoples-Jones' dynasty value.
Brutal.
That's the sound of his dynasty value exploding, right? Going up. I mean, before I give my take on that, Podfather, what do you think as far as my original question, which Theo did a great job of answering, but I'm curious, that theory that players get traded on their rookie contract, does that apply to the other positions? I mean, more as an example, but there's many players at the running back or wide receiver position. So does it nuke their value?
It all depends. Does it affect your value? Always. Especially if it's very little coming back in return. Like, oh, we're going to trade you a Elijah Moore and a third rounder for your second rounder. Jesus. Right? That is selling low. When a team sells low on a player, that ratchets up their uncertainty. That is a risk factor enhancement for sure. Then if they end up landing in a great spot, it offsets. So Elijah Moore was the perfect offset. Like, he hasn't moved on the player profile or dynasty rankings, but a bunch of stuff happened behind the scenes, right? A bunch of his input factors and input values changed, and yet they outweighed each other, right? It all offset. So his risk factor went up because now an NFL team has given up on him. That's bad. But he landed in a situation with a quarterback upgrade before Aaron Rodgers hits New York. It's a massive quarterback upgrade, and it's a clear path to being number 2 in target. So situation improves, but the NFL's perception of the player has clearly diminished. So it shakes out equal.
Yeah, a player that was traded, passed around for first-round picks on the rookie contract. I always think of Brandon Cooks. How many times was that guy traded for a first-round pick? And what we'll do is here, let's break here, because when we come back, I want to get into a little bit of FFPC Dynasty. A lot of player profiler subscribers, fans, love to play in the FFPC. It's a little bit different format, so we'll break down some strategies, some trades as the cut-down date is approaching. We'll be right back after this.
You know, people always ask me, hey, what is the World Series of fantasy or the Super Bowl of fantasy football? And it's easy. It's the FFPC, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. It's a $6 million prize pool. And they've had their Never Too Early Best Ball leagues cranking since February. So the FFPC is the answer to so many questions. Hey, where's the best place to get a Dynasty Orphan? Well, you can adopt a Dynasty Orphan at the FFPC. That's why we partner with them. If you want to play fantasy football for low, medium, high stakes, seasonal, best ball, dynasty, go to the FFPC. And don't forget, promo code Underworld to get you $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team, no matter what team it is, no matter what format it is, at the FFPC. Go do it.
We're back on the Sonic Truth Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Alan Seslowsky of RotoWire, along with Theo Gremminger, the OG Fantasy on Twitter, and, of course, Matt Kelly, the Podfather. And we are about to break down a few trades, a few cut-down things on the FFPC. And the one thing, Matt, in that commercial that you didn't talk about with the FFPC, their claim to fame is, what's the worst thing about a dynasty league is that in 3 to 5 years, you could be building this team and then it just falls apart. The FFPC has never, not once, had a team, a league go under. So you could be assured when you play on the FFPC, and Theo could attest to this, that it's going to be there for as long as you are.
That's a great...
It's definitely not...
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
That's a great call. Why didn't you help me produce that commercial, Alan?
Well, the worst thing is, I'm telling you, I spent years building these teams, doing this productive struggle, episode 1 of the Sonic Truth podcast. And then all of a sudden, 4 people leave the league because Derrick Henry or Tom Brady expire, and players like that. And then all this work, all this money I put in. So yeah, the FFPC, and I think their format...
Let me talk about this for a second. Let me talk about this. I was invited to a Dynasty League by one Nate Liss, former co-host of this show. It's called the I'm Outraged League. I'm Outraged number 3. So Nate puts together all these leagues. He's like, hey, if you're a fan of mine or a friend of mine, you should come join this Dynasty League. So I join, Cody joins, Nate joins, and I do productive struggle, right? I traded for first-round picks. I've got the 101 this year via trade. I'm going to draft Bijan. Spoiler alert. However, I would have been considering a quarterback because it's Superflex and it's 16 teams. Ooh. So if it's 16 teams, Superflex, 16 team, 2 quarterback, you got to be considering CJ Stroud there over Bijan Robinson, really based on need at that point. But quarterback impossible to get in a 16 team league that's 2 quarterback. So I was preparing to draft C.J. Stroud, and then lo and behold, 4 teams drop out. So now we're down to a 12-team league, and there's a dispersal draft. I'm in the dispersal draft, by the way. My first pick, they let me have Mark Andrews. It's a 2 tight end league. So now I have Mark Andrews and T.J. Hawkinson in a 2 tight end league. And in the second round, Aaron Rodgers was still there. I took Aaron Rodgers after Brandon Ayuk in a 2-quarterback Superflex league. What are we talking about? Whether it's 2-quarterback, whether it's Superflex, doesn't even matter. It's my point. You go Aaron Rodgers there. So my team is built to win, and that's the thing with productive struggle. Once you have determined the year you're going to start competing, you start competing. So the draft happened in 2021. So I punt 2021. I was competing last year, made the playoffs, made a nice run, and I'm back to competing. I'm back to being all in. But because of the productive struggle, I'm all in with Aaron Rodgers on the one hand from a dispersal and Bijan Robinson. And so this is going to be a super team. But guess who's not going to be in the league with me? Cody. Guess who's not going to be in the league with me? Nate. Why? Because they ran and they hid from the Podfather. Bye, guys. Bye. We'll see you. That's how leagues fold, right? And people like me, they're doing productive struggle. I'm assuming that everyone is playing in this league in good faith. And then I look up and some of my best friends in this industry are gone.
How can Nate dropped out of the I'm Outraged league? It's his league.
At an outraged Jew on Twitter, go ahead and tweet at Nate Liss asking him why he abandoned the I'm Outraged 3 league just to let me run over the other 11 league members.
Did he give the I'm in too many leagues excuse?
I don't know, but he was talking a lot of shit when we were drafting. I can tell you that right now. He's talking a lot of shit about how strong his team was. But some of these guys, they're just like, I'm just going to go all veterans. I'm going to win now, then I'm going to leave the league in a year. Shame on them. You need to be able to sign like a 5-year commitment if you want to join a Dynasty league.
It's the beauty of the FFPC is that you have to pay the half down payment no matter how expensive your league is. You are paying for half of next season's entry as well, and it kind of deters you from leaving a league to lose that sort of money. And Alan, you bring up the leagues never fold. When they do have a situation where a manager leaves, they are very, very organized and very aggressive at finding potential owners for these orphans. So, I've purchased orphans from the FFPC, and they also have, sites that they work with to get those orphans sold. So they're very efficient with it. Your league will never fold. If you do a startup with them this year, that'll be there in 5 years. And if you want to get an orphan and go to an established league, it's a great place to purchase orphans.
20 off with promo code Underworld.
Yeah. And if you're in a dynasty league, that should be standard issue rule. Not only should you have to pay the following year before the rookie draft, you should have, so every year you have a deposit fold down. Anytime you trade away a pick in an outer year, it doesn't matter if it's a 3rd round pick, you should have to pay that full year. So right now, if I'm trading my 25 second, meaning my 2025 second round pick, I should have to pay for that year, because what's to stop someone in the dynasty league from trading away their outer picks and then running away from the league when it all collapses,
Why don't you ask Cody? Because he's the one that traded me Bijan. He's the one that traded me Bijan, what became the 101. He had no idea, right? I don't know what he was thinking. I don't even remember when it was. It was 1 or 2 years ago. We did a trade involving his first rounder. And then here's my impression of Cody Carpentier in the I'm Outraged number 3 league. Hold on. Let me do it quick. To be fair, this is not just about Cody. This is also about Nate. Okay, this is my impression of Nate Liss in his own Dynasty League named after himself when he's competing with the Podfather.
Who would have thought things would have come full circle, Theo? I'm on the Sonic Truth making fun of Nate. Like it was him and them making fun of me. So, no, Nate's our guy. I feel bad. He's still taking fire from the Podfather.
I don't feel bad at all.
But this
particular
situation,
Dynasty League named after himself.
Who's commissioning? Does he at least name a commissioner, or is he just like, I'm out, you guys figure it out? You guys just figure it out.
The league was in the wind. So now, I'm really sort of proud of everyone that that stepped up, right?
Yeah, we're gonna have to get an answer on this one, because it's one thing to abandon a dynasty league. It's an even more heinous offense to abandon your own league. So as much as I like to stand up for Nate and be Nate's advocate, when you guys are fighting, this is shameful,
Very shameful.
Oh man! So let's get into some of the trades and the cut down. So I think what's really unique about FFPC. And just what's that promo code one more time, Podfather, that they could use to get some bonus cash?
Underworld.
Okay, Theo, just briefly explain for those who are looking to get into the FFPC or not as familiar with it as maybe like the sleeper leagues. Why is it so unique as far as like the depth and explain what March 31st, why that's significant in the FFPC?
So the biggest difference in FFPC is you have to consolidate your roster. Your roster sizes get cut down to 16, including a kicker and defense on the 31st of March. Then there's kind of a roster, waiting period where you can actually add more guys if you wanted to trade or whatever. And then you have your rookie drafts, and then it increases to a 20 person, 20-man roster. So it's to compare it to like the deeper dynasty formats, like your more traditional dynasty leagues. It's very difficult to make like a 3-for-1, a 4-for-1 trade and trade an elite asset for, 3 guys that could potentially help you, or 4 guys that could potentially help you. You see those sort of trades go down in other dynasty formats. I'd say that FFPC, the successful managers know how to treat cuts, know how to manage their roster, and know how to consolidate.
Right. And it wouldn't be uncommon, for example, on a really good roster, Rashad Bateman to be a tough cut keep decision. I mean, we all like Rashad Bateman, but if you're an elite team, well, that's my point. Again, is someone like Rondell Moore is going to be. Go ahead.
Stop it. Stop talking about Rashad Bateman as a roster cut if you can keep 16 players. It's a nice problem to have, by the way. Can I tell you my problem? Okay, if anyone's debating whether to keep Rashad Bateman or not, my advice is keep Rashad Bateman and find someone else to cut. My big dilemma that I had cutting down was DJ Chark versus Michael Carter. That was my big... If I was looking through all my FFPC dynasty teams, and the one that I had the hardest time with was Chark versus Carter, and what it came down to was I had a glut at running back, and I chose to cut Carter. Even though all else equal, I would probably keep Carter over Chark. But in a best ball format, where with a guy like Chark who has downfield playmaking ability, I want those Chark spike weeks, even though Michael Carter is a Breece Hall injury rehabilitation delay away from starting on one of the best offenses in the AFC potentially in the month of September. So it was a real dilemma for me. That was a real dilemma because Michael Carter has some hidden value there. There is the chance that Breece Hall rushes back and experiences another injury to a hamstring injury that delays his return to the league, or something even worse potentially. But typically when these guys are trying to push their bodies to come back from ACL tears, usually get a hamstring injury, and that's what ends up delaying their return and their rehabilitation. It's not usually that the ACL itself is re-injured, although that can also happen. They have to go back in for a revision surgery. That sometimes can happen. I don't want to talk about any of this because we love Breece Hall so much. I adore Breece Hall, and especially the ability to command targets down the field for a running back is such a rare skill. These guys come along every few years, and we celebrate them. But it is a possibility. It is a possibility. There's some sort of aggravation to this injury, and there's real value with Michael Carter, as this is a solid offensive line. They've invested in the draft and the offensive line in New York. They've got Garrett Wilson. They signed Lazard. They're bringing in Aaron Rodgers for the most massive quarterback upgrade in the NFL this offseason. That's all good news for whoever the running back is. It just means a lot more touchdowns. And we know that Michael Carter has an all-purpose skill set. If there's anything he can do, we know it's catch passes. So I like Michael Carter. I just happen to have a glut of running backs. It was the original sin of that team. The original sin of one of these FFPC teams is you draft too many good, not great running backs. That is the cardinal sin of a format where you cut down to something like 16, because then you put yourself in this impossible situation. Do I cut Pacheco? Do I cut Miles Sanders? You have all these guys with like a 80.0 lifetime value rating, good, not great, making a decision of who to cut. It ends up coming down to Gainwell versus Michael Carter. And it's just that Gainwell has a much clearer path to touches on an even better offense than Michael Carter, but it's not a decision you want to be making. You just want to have a handful of running backs and then churn those running backs in the draft. So what I should have done is been aggressively trying to deal 2 of those running backs in the month leading up to cuts, and I fucked up.
But I think you hit the nail on the head, though, Matt, that this is a classic cut down, conundrum. Weighing a guy like DJ Chark versus weighing a guy like Michael Carter versus weighing, potentially giving someone, 4 starts of Michael Carter or maybe 6 usable weeks of DJ Chark for like a 6th round pick that's going to net you nothing. It's a classic dilemma that you've got to weigh as an FFPC manager. I have multiple teams with Michael Carter cut down dilemmas. And I think that he's the kind of guy that could gain a lot of short-term dynasty value this summer. If I don't even want to talk about Breece Hall having a setback.
I don't want to talk about it.
But he's the kind of guy, Michael Carter, that, if he gets you 4 to 6 starts, this would have been a very bad decision if you go DJ Chark over him. Then you look at a guy like DJ Chark. Is there a path to wide receiver 3 land where you can have, kind of a nice season out of him? I personally would probably lean Carter. But the best ball format, I think you made the correct decision with the spike week wide receiver. It's a tough one. And this is why FFPC is so challenging, because especially when you get to this week, managers are not going to trade you for him. They're going to say, I'm going to wait and see which one you cut. The only manager who might trade you for Michael Carter is the Breece Hall manager. And then you'd be giving him an advantage by, providing him his handcuff for like a 7th or 6th rounder.
Hey guys, I don't think that Michael Carter right now on the depth chart, it's Bam Knight. And at the end of the season, it was Bam Knight that was getting the lead back touches. So Podfather, with all the talk that even Zeke Elliott might sign with the Jets, there's a 10%, 15% chance of that. You already have Bam Knight. Isn't Michael Carter more of a specialist? Isn't this an easy decision for you? I'm surprised, I guess, that you guys are valuing Michael Carter as someone who would start when we didn't see that at the end of last season.
Catching passes, full PPR, dude.
Yeah,
it's full PPR catching passes. And if it's Bam Knight on early downs and it's Michael Carter in passing situations, Michael Carter is then in the Aaron Jones role with Aaron Rodgers. You love that. You absolutely love that. There's more upside there than there is with Chark. There's more week-to-week upside there with Chark. But with Chark, you're locking in those 5 to 6 spike weeks that you're going to get. They might not be as spiky as they could be on another team, right? I hate the fact that he's at Carolina. That's also what weighed in my decision. I was like, man, he lost a bunch of value on our rankings when he went to Carolina just because the ceiling, the weekly ceiling goes down, given that it's going to be a rookie quarterback. But you do know he's going to score some long touchdowns. You at least can lock that in, where there's just a lot of uncertainty around Michael Carter, both with Breece Hall's health and with Donovan Knight. I can tell you one thing, they're not going to bring in another running back. That ain't happening. And I recall that when Ezekiel Elliott and his people put out the notion that the Jets were in play, Breece Hall went to social media immediately and said, nah, we're good.
Yeah.
Which was, I thought, pretty outstanding. More of this, please. More professional wrestling between players. I love this. Anyone that has an opinion about what their team should be doing, cutting or not cutting, signing or not signing particular players, please go to social media and express your opinion. We love it. It's great fan engagement. Do it. Do more of it. Thank you, Breece Hall.
And I love the Bam Knight, end of season production that he showed, but I think that a lot of that occurred when Michael Carter was dealing with injuries. And a healthy Michael Carter, I agree with Matt, it does have more value. He was also a guy that the Robert Saleh coaching staff. That was one of the first guys they picked. You know, he had the high day 3 draft capital, pass catcher. So I'll go with Matt on that one.
He's demonstrating PPR for those on the audio podcast. And I think when we're talking about running back values in FFPC, this leads us into a conversation that's relevant this week. There's been whispers and murmurs that Javonte Williams could be more compromised, guys, than was already even thought of. Is there a chance, Theo, that you should just clip him off your FFPC roster? Or
what?
Well,
No.
Okay, well, that's
Christ, Alan.
Well, let me finish. I know this is an extreme view. He may not play at all this year. I'm saying, are there injured? Start with this one word answer first, then I'll ask you the question. I'll frame it a little better. Is there injured reserve spots in FFPC?
There are injured reserve spots in FFPC,
okay,
but with the Dynasty, but after cut day, you're going to be able to utilize them.
That's fine, though.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you can't clog your whole season with a guy that, let's say they ruled him out for the year. Again, this is in play, guys. And by the way, Trevor Lawrence, what a better pick that was in single quarterback league over Javonte.
This is why he's bringing up Javonte back.
No, but
so Alan, you cannot, please, if you're listening to the Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast, by all means, please do not cut Javonte Williams. We will never tell you to cut Javonte Williams. Yeah. The lowest. I made 2 deals for Javonte involving Javonte Williams, not trading for him. There's obvious concerns there. I like Samaje Perine behind him. I think he's a sneaky value right now. But if you're gonna trade Javonte Williams, you use him as part of a package in order to get better and to consolidate. We talked about consolidating. Javonte's a perfect way to consolidate. He's the kind of guy that we talked about this together, Matt, and also Alan on your podcast about how Javonte Williams, if you are a productive struggle team, that's the kind of guy you want to take on because he does have that path, but it might not be this season. Javonte Williams, I have traded him with the 112 to move up for the 103, which I love that. And I don't think I could get that deal done today, but that was maybe a month ago. And then I was offered the 202 for him, and I just couldn't do it. But I think I might go back there and take that trade today. I'm worried about Javonte Williams, and I love this draft class. And like we talked about, that 1-2 turn in rookie drafts is going to have a lot of running back value. There's a lot of guys we could see, fall into that range that could be really, really, really effective this year and also moving forward. So Javonte, either package him in order to get a better pick or to get a better player, and consider trading him for 2 seconds, because I think you can get a 2 seconds trade done.
Yes.
Wow. Do you guys know how old Javonte Williams is?
Is he 22?
He's 22. Yeah. So yes, he is the best possible productive struggle running back that you could draft in a startup. Absolutely. Bones, ligaments, tendons, they heal. Sometimes with Achilles, they take 2 years to fully heal and regain your strength, but they eventually will heal. Javonte Williams will be 100% in 2024.
Baby.
I just don't know what you're going to get from him in 2023. In 2024, he's going to be, at this time next year, he's still going to be 23 years old. He's going to be going into his age 24 season next year. He'll be going into his age 24 season. That is not a big deal. That's plenty of tread left on the tire. And if he sits out most of 2023, that just means that he'll have an extended career. I'm not as concerned about Javonte Williams in Dynasty. I am certainly very concerned about him in seasonal leagues and best ball.
Can't draft him.
This was a player that was widely discussed as a lock for top 5 Dynasty running back. He was the guy everyone was talking about, steaming him all the way up into the mid-second round of seasonal leagues last year. Everybody talking about his all-purpose skill set, his tackle-breaking ability, one of the most talented running backs in the league. The guy gets one injury and a bunch of rumors, and you're cutting him? Alan, knock it off.
I said clipping him off your roster. So I maybe that was a little extreme. So let me ask you this, Podfather. Snap call right now. You're in a Superflex Dynasty draft. I have that cutoff of the players I want around pick 9 or 10. If someone offers you, if is Javonte Williams, which side? Pick 111 in this year's rookie draft or Javonte Williams? Which side of that is more valuable to you? Forget productive struggle, win now. Let's just say you're always trying to win.
Well, that could be Roschon Johnson. I'd rather have Roschon Johnson.
Okay, so
he's not essentially like a healthy version of Javonte Williams. So I go with the pick there.
Theo?
Superflex no-brainer 111 I'm taking. In a single quarterback, I'm still probably taking the 111 for Javonte right now. And I know there's some risk for that, but like Matt said, it's the you have opportunities to pivot. You can have an opportunity to pivot to Roschon Johnson. You'll have an opportunity to pivot to Tyjae Spears if we like the landing spot. All of those guys are going to be there from like 111 to like 204, unless they have a perfect landing spot, and then they'll jump up to like the 108. But right now, that's a running back sweet spot for us, is the end of the first to the mid-second. You're going to see like 5 running backs being selected.
Part of the reason that Samaje Perine signed in Denver was that he was told that Sean Payton, I run a 2-back system. I think that if you can get a pick that starts with a 1 for Javonte Williams, his value is only going to go down in the trade market and fantasy. I think this is the time to get out, and I think that pick 111, 112 is the sweet spot. You could still find a fantasy manager that believes. So I think that's it. Let's continue with Denver, but I want to stay with this Superflex conversation, guys, because I'm curious. Theo, in FFPC, is there optimism about Russell Wilson? As you know, we just talked about Trey Lance not too long ago. At the beginning of this conversation, before the lights went on, I maintained that Russell Wilson was always a safer pick in Superflex. Where is his value right now, and where should dynasty managers that are in startups be valuing someone like Russell Wilson with Sean Payton?
By the way, are you going to turn your lights on, Alan? You're so dark.
Yeah, it's the aperture. I have to open the aperture in my camera because I have a lot of lights on.
You do?
I just forgot. Yeah, I have the 2 right up 45-degree angles, and I have the ring light right here. See, like here, I'll show you what happens with it off. See, that's off, and that's on.
Oh, look how good my face looks. Now,
you
got some
guys
sun this weekend, so he's a little more on the red side of the spectrum. Yeah, but my skin looks fantastic. This is the right tone that you want, Alan. This is what you're looking for in terms of
I'm still working
and color. I look healthy.
I gotta get some warm lights, coming down.
Theo's forehead is shiny, and his face is mostly red.
Yeah, Theo looks like he got
all summer.
You are a guy that gets sunburned if you don't put on like number 50 at the beach, right?
I'm a 30 man.
Sunburned in March.
I'm a 30 man. It's the face gets a little red, but I'm a 30 man, Alan. When I'm in the Florida sunshine, I throw the 30. I don't go 50. Yeah, you gotta live a little, Alan. You're
not a white zinc on the nose guy. You remember those guys at the beach that we wear like the white zinc on their nose?
That's you, Alan.
Never touch the zinc.
You're that guy. You're that guy. Can we, real quick though, rapid fire, can we get Theo to give us some of his dilemmas with his FFPC cutdowns?
Certainly. I can pull them up right now. So I have a number of teams that are sitting on like 18, and I wait till the last minute to see if I can do a last minute trade or something like that. A couple of these are ugly. A couple of these are interesting. Wan'Dale Robinson versus Romeo Doubs.
That's pretty easy. That's Wan'Dale.
Wan'Dale, yeah.
Why would you? That's a debate for you?
It is.
It's just an interesting one, just based on the Giants are adding target competition while the Packers are not. I think there's a backdoor chance for Doubs to be the number 2 target next year in an ugly situation.
No, there's not. So I have something called the Breakout Finder. And
I understand that.
With the Breakout Finder, it actually goes back and looks at the guy's college profile and just gives you a percentage chance of him breaking out. Now, it has gone down. If he doesn't break out in his rookie year, it necessarily goes down. But when they were both rookies, Wan'Dale Robinson had more than twice the probability of breaking out than Romeo Doubs. That tells me that Wan'Dale Robinson's just a better player, and now he's on a better offense. So I don't know what the hell your dilemma is.
Higher draft capital as well. It is my last cut on this team. But
Okay, can you just do it right now for us with us together? Go ahead and cut Romeo Doubs on air.
I'm gonna do an on air. I'm gonna do an on air cut.
Do it. Cut fucking Romeo Doubs on air, especially if the choice is Wan'Dale. Wan'Dale Robinson is an exciting player.
I'm pulling this up. This is a very high stakes league, and I'm gonna go down to cut Romeo Doubs. We're doing an on air cut. I'm keeping Mr. Wan'Dale Robinson. All right, guys, here we go. Do we have a sound effect for cut? Maybe the crash and burn.
We do. We have
Chainsaw.
we have the drum roll.
But
Drum roll would be good.
I forgot the music to bring us in. Alan, that's two shows in a row. I forgot the music to bring us into the stream. All right, so that is the drum roll. Although the drum roll is.
How about a chainsaw?
Okay.
You got a chainsaw or a scissor or?
I don't have it. How about this? Are you gonna tell me when you're gonna do the cut, Theo?
The cut has been done. We have an opportunity to move on to.
You're supposed to lie,
okay,
Theo.
all right. You know what? You know what, Matt? It didn't accept yet. So I'll set it up again. I'm gonna go. I didn't press the button. I didn't press the. I did the cut, but I left the. Are you sure?
Okay,
so I'm gonna pull it up again.
Are you sure? Okay. On the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cut him.
Goodbye, Romeo Doubs.
Yeah, that doesn't feel like a cut sound. That feels like fist pumping Jersey Shore club sound.
I've got a sound effect for what his team is now without Romeo Doubs. And I've also got another sound. I got a sound for the team that drafts Romeo Doubs, because now that in the FFPC, these players go into the rookie draft, which makes it an additional level of strategy, right? It's an additional wrinkle that there are veterans in the rookie draft. So whoever drafts Romeo Doubs in the draft, this is their vehicle. This is how they're getting to work this morning. This is a team with Romeo Doubs.
Clown car.
Yep.
That other sound effect you played after you said this is his team with Romeo Doubs, it sounded like he was stuck in the mud. Like it sounded like the car was spinning their tires. So I don't think that's appropriate either. You got to find.
Well, that is the Giants right now with Wan'Dale. That is true. It's a sports car that isn't going anywhere. That's really what Wan'Dale Robinson is. But at least he's a sports car. That's my larger point. Do you understand what I'm saying? You guys picking up what I'm laying down here? Yeah, at least you give yourself a chance to have upside. Romeo Doubs has no upside. Okay, none.
It's a somewhat bad player in a potentially good situation that usually doesn't work out in fantasy football. It's a bad crutch.
Player, bad situation, bad fantasy pick, bad all around. Give us another dilemma.
Okay, the next one is interesting. This is the team's pretty good. I would say that I'm on the cusp of potentially winning this league. It is Donovan Peoples-Jones on a team with wide receiver depth versus Gerald Everett as a luxury. He's most likely my tight end 3, but I don't. I'm leaning Everett unless you guys can make a bull case for keeping Donovan Peoples-Jones as the now wide receiver 3 in Cleveland.
I'm a DPJ guy here. I mean, he does something that the other receivers don't do on this team.
I got a sound effect for Donovan Peoples-Jones. You guys ready for this? After this is I like Donovan Peoples-Jones. When Elijah Moore arrives, go Gerald Everett.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go Everett on that one. But that one I'm gonna try to trade. I will not do an on-air cut because I think I can get something for one of those two guys.
Wait, can I actually? I have another sound effect, which is what you'll get in return for Donovan Peoples-Jones in any dynasty league at this point. Now that Elijah Moore is a Brown, and the fact that Elijah Moore is a Brown and that Donovan Peoples-Jones is a Brown goes with what I'm about to do. So
is that the sound of it?
No, Theo, good luck. Best of luck in your trading. This is, I can tell you this. In these FFPC leagues, generally speaking, when you try to dump a player you're going to cut, you're going to get this. You guys are ready? This is what you'll get. when you try to trade someone who you're about to cut. This is what you typically what you get in the FFPC. Again, I wish we could do it on air. You putting Donovan Peoples-Jones on the block in the FFPC, just so we can get this sound effect to be absolute illustration of it in a Dynasty context. Because this is what you're going to get back here. But congratulations. You have Donovan Peoples-Jones for the next 36 hours.
There you go. There you go. The cricket sound effect also means 2024 fifth rounder. It correlates. It's a 2024 fifth. I can squeeze that out for something.
Another dilemma.
But I don't think there's a dilemma with losing Peoples-Jones. I mean, I think that if it all goes well and he's a wide receiver 4, I'm saying goodbye to wide receiver 4. Where Gerald Everett back with Herbert could be a tight end 12 next year. Something useful.
Isn't the
Next
essential
dilemma.
question isn't the essential question always which one of these guys are you more likely to start? I mean, that's really whenever these questions come down. Who, if you were in a bye week pinch or in an injury situation, I think that's the essential question to always ask yourself.
100%. With the tight end premium, starting multiple tight ends is viable in the FFPC. Peoples-Jones would be, I'm hoping for a deep touchdown. Whereas Gerald Everett, we've seen him have, big productive games. So it's pretty much a no-brainer, but it's not quite a no-brainer because I do think I'll be able to make a trade with DPJ.
You're not going to be. We're glad to help, though. We're glad to help. It is comforting to just get the answer you were hoping for, to get your priors reinforced.
I love getting my priors reinforced, guys. There's nothing better in Dynasty.
Oh, yeah.
Here's a good one for you guys. This team is set. I shipped it last year. Won a nice amount of money. It's a higher stakes FFPC league. I have KJ Osborn, who's gained a nice amount of value this offseason with Adam Thielen leaving. And I have Hunter Henry as a tight end 3. This team has TJ Hawkinson. This team has Cole Kmet. And this team is also loaded at wide receiver. So both of these guys would be luxury picks. This is a tough one between Henry and Osborn.
You're loaded at wide receiver until you're not loaded at wide receiver because of injuries, because of other things. To me, this is not a difficult choice. KJ Osborn, he's only gotten better every year, and now they let go of a guy who helps the team because he's on the roster. Hunter Henry, I would never feel comfortable starting him over anyone that's rated tight end 15 through 25. So this is an Osborn easy pick for me.
Oh, Alan. Are you ever going to get one of these right? Are you ever going to get anyone to say? Because the answer is clearly KJ Osborn. Yeah, that's right. Alan got one.
Alan got it.
You got it, everybody. You got one right. That's easy. I'm actually embarrassed for Theo that even thought that was a dilemma.
Well, it's a dilemma in the fact that you have tight end scarcity in FFPC leagues like this, where you're going to have difficulty adding. And I know we say now, you have TJ Hawkinson, you have Cole Kmet. Injuries happen, guys miss time. It's carrying a third tight end is not the worst strategy in these FFPC leagues. You also have, Matt, the fact that when somebody else loses a tight end, if you have 3 starting tight ends, even a guy Hunter Henry, who we might say is tight end 20 for the week, not an exciting play, they still have appeal. To me, it's KJ Osborn in a as a dynasty value, it's not even close. KJ Osborn's a much more valuable player, but based on the team context, this team has Deebo Samuel, this team has AJ Brown, this team has Amon-Ra St. Brown, this team has a number of wide receivers. So that's where I get a little bit of
some huge weeks.
KJ Osborn could be a wide receiver 3 this year, and when it comes down to it, he's got a path. He'll be the number 3 target in a very, very good offense that passes the ball a lot. There's a chance that Dalvin Cook is not there or is missing weeks, and they go even more pass happy. So KJ Osborn to me is like a guy I would like to have in a lot of dynasty teams, but on this particular team, he's a luxury.
I am fine just throwing guys back into the pool. also. Like, I'm not going to break my back trying to trade these guys because oftentimes it's a waste of time, right? And I have better uses of my time than trying to trade players that no one wants. But also, you sending them back into the pool gives you the opportunity to draft them. If you really like them, you can also draft them. Or you could actually put out a guy that someone else drafts, and then it pushes a player that you wouldn't have otherwise got to yourself. So there is some value in cutting, in that it does increase the talent pool of the draft itself. And that's something that no one ever really thinks about, but it does help you to put a slightly more coveted asset and tempt someone to go grab a Hunter Henry. I don't think someone would grab a Hunter Henry early, but someone could, for example, draft Donovan Peoples-Jones before you would be willing to draft them, and then that would help you maybe push a player you wouldn't have gotten to your pick in, say, the 3rd round, the 4th round. That's a possibility. In this particular case, you got to also think about it in the context of the rookie draft. Everyone is going to go KJ Osborn probably at least a round before Hunter Henry in the FFPC. Now, it's many rounds in other leagues. I'm just saying, I play in the FFPC, and there's no way in the FFPC, especially with all these rookie tight ends that are coming out. Think about all these rookie tight ends that are coming out. Kincaid and Kuntz, all these guys. Laporta, right? Hunter Henry's going to get pushed down. You'll be able to get Hunter Henry in the draft. Don't worry. But someone's going to go up and grab KJ Osborn.
Yeah, KJ, it's KJ Osborn, but there's always a part of me that does not like to let tight ends go in FFPC. But it's clearly KJ Osborn. Here's one where I've consolidated the team well.
Before you get into the next trade, though, just keep in mind KJ Osborn, last 5 weeks of the season, guys, wide receiver 7 in PPR. That's a top 10 wide receiver last 5 weeks of the season. And also, you know, I hear you about letting go of tight ends when they come at a premium, but there's always the Jelani Woods or the Jawan Johnsons that pop up for plug and play weeks.
100%. There's a lot of change in that, but back end tight end. But I will say that those guys you bring up, Alan, if you flash on the waiver wire as a tight end in FFPC, and of course you want to read about all your waiver wire needs at Player Profiler throughout the season, we got you covered. But those guys, if you have a 15-point week as a tight end, you think of the Tyler Conklins, those guys that pop early. Those guys you have to spend a tremendous amount of fab money on. Those guys don't just fall in your lap. You're spending 10, 15% on those kind of guys. Even if the path, like Jelani Woods had the wild week, and he's a little different because he has long-term dynasty value. But there was a week where Jelani Woods was on a few waiver wires. He had his massive spike week. You're talking about people spent 35% to grab Jelani Woods. So that's a dangerous game to play in FFPC because you're not saving enough fab money to be able to go after that running back that always comes available to you in midseason if you're going to spend too much on a tight end. So I hear you. It happens. Dalton Schultz, I had a lot of teams win a lot of money getting Dalton Schultz, early in the season in both redraft and in Dynasty. But it's a dangerous game to say, I'm just going to go get a guy on the waiver wire.
What you have to do in the FFPC is get the tight ends early. By week 7, 8, they're gone. They're all gone. Like, they've all been run through. All the Woodses, they're all gone. All the Walkers, everybody, they're gone. Okay? So you need to focus on looking at getting those tight ends that are getting the snaps. Fuck production, right? You look at if they're athletic or they have a history of production in college and their snap shares start to go up because we have the snap shares week by week on Player Profiler in the game logs. You can check those snap shares. You can see the profile of the player, and then you can get those guys a couple weeks before they break out. And so what you can do is stash. Sometimes in the FFPC, I'm carrying 4 to 5 tight ends, knowing that at any time one of these guys can break out. They suddenly have instant trade value. And so that is the game to play in tight end premium, is you got to stay ahead of the curve. Because if you wait and then you have to outbid your opponents to get a guy that just scored 2 touchdowns, that's a losing game. So I also don't spend up big on tight end in the FFPC either, because I know they get super inflated right? I always put in some reasonable bids. I always get outbid on those tight ends. But the nice thing is I tend to get the running backs, right? Because everyone's so fixated on quarterback in Superflex and tight end in the FFPC tight end premium leagues specifically, which those of us that are planning ahead, that are the squirrels that are putting tight ends away for a rainy day, lets us use our fab money on running back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was no.
No, I think you said that very well, Matt. It is the format where you also have kind of the misconception where in the FFPC, if you have like your team you talked about with Andrews and Hawkinson, that's not an FFPC team, but those guys have so much value in a tight end premium format that it's going to be really hard for me to go up against a manager who's able to use Hawkinson every week. It's kind of like Kelsey. Just because I have tight end 9 doesn't mean I'm like doing battle with tight end 1. You know, there's a huge gap if you don't have that quality.
Yeah, it was just really the conversation about where Osborn finished last year versus who you could pick up was more in the dynasty context of who you keep, who you cut. So when you cut down on March 31st in FFPC, some of those players we talked about that haven't popped yet, the Tyler Conklins from last year, those guys will be available in that rookie veteran draft. That's all I meant is in relation to your specific situation. So let's move on to the next one. That was a good conversation about tight end value in FFPC. Who are some of the other tough cut down decisions that you're looking at in the coming weeks with FFPC Dynasty?
Well, this is an interesting one. It's a team that I've consolidated quite aggressively. I picked up a David Montgomery. I picked up a TJ Hawkinson in trades you can read about on Player Profiler. The article's coming out this week. This is a classic roster construction choice. Kirk Cousins as my quarterback 2 behind Joe Burrows, or do I go with holding on Jerrick McKinnon just in case Kansas City just signs him for cheap after the NFL draft? And he last year finishes as an RB2. He was a valuable weapon in that offense where he's sitting out there, looks like a cut, but I feel like that one could come back to haunt me, right after the NFL draft. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Who was your QB1 again in that format?
Joe Burrow.
All right. So you said Burrow. Yeah, I could see the argument here. I'm holding on to Cousins, but I understand why this is a dilemma. So if I'm forced to make the cut today, Jerrick McKinnon without a team, there's still good running backs on the market like Kareem Hunt, like Leonard Fournette. Given the landscape of if a decision made today, I'm holding Kirk Cousins as I could see myself starting him more and him booing my team.
Jesus Christ, Alan. It's a one quarterback league. He has Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow gets hurt, he's dead anyway.
Not if he has Kirk Cousins.
You don't play the insurance game. Okay? Insurance salesmen do poorly in fantasy football. Okay? Yeah. Get out of here. Did you see what Jerrick McKinnon did in the second half? Come on, man. Do you realize there's going to be the Purdys? All these guys are going to be available as a QB2 on the waiver wire. They're going to come up, Gardner Minshew. There's all these guys. They're not going to give you exactly Kirk Cousins, but if you lose Burrow for a period of time, you'll be able to stream. It's not a big deal.
Well, Alan, you have a theory on certain leagues have more quarterback hoarders than others.
Yeah, I think even in single quarterback leagues and Dynasty, I mean, there was a study done on Yahoo Fantasy, and just this is more casual leagues, that even in single quarterback leagues, that the average number of quarterbacks rostered was 1.8 quarterbacks. So basically, single quarterback leagues end up being 2 quarterback leagues, and that's in a 5-bench league. Now you're talking about FFPC and Dynasty. What you think the replacement value might be on the waiver wire is not that much, because after that draft, all those guys, yes, Brock Purdy emerges, Geno Smith does emerge. But only one team can get those guys. So
he'll get one of them. I'm not worried about it. You shouldn't be worried about it either. There's no reason to worry about it. You can always get a mobile quarterback who's by definition more mobile than Kirk Cousins. On waivers, through trade, it's just very easy where McKinnon signs back with Kansas City. He's going to have a lot of value. The guy had 2 30-point weeks in the second half.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too because there's people think they're going to go and get a DeAndre Hopkins or draft a wide receiver that could create a little more target competition, but there's a chance that they just look very similar to last year, and McKinnon re-signs with them after the draft for cheap, and he has another running back 3 season where Matt brought up he was like a league winner because he was crushing towards the very end of the season and the fantasy playoffs. So I'm leaning McKinnon. I do hate letting go of a guy who's like a top, let's call him a top 12 to, well, we can go a little bit lower because I think that there's chances guys can overtake Cousins, but I don't like letting him go, but I think it's probably McKinnon. And I think that's
think about the guys going to be in the draft, guys. You're going to
100%.
Think about look at the rookies that are going to be in the draft. You got Stroud, right? You got Anthony Richardson. What? Right, you think about where he's going to go in the startup. He's probably going to go or in the rookie draft. Where's someone going to grab Cousins? 3rd round?
Yeah, 4th round even. It's
4th
whoever
round,
needs it.
5th round. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, I think it's McKinnon as well. It's just a classic. Where do we value these running backs who are unattached? I think the market kind of pushed them down, but at the end of the day, these guys actually get to see the NFL draft. And kind of adjust, who they sign on with. So I think it might be slight advantage to these Kareem Hunts, Leonard Fournettes, and Jerrick McKinnons, where they're not just signing on with somebody and potentially ending up in a more crowded situation. So I'm trying to find ways to keep these guys.
You're
the
cutting
Hunts,
down to 16, and you're going to keep 2 quarterbacks in a 1 quarterback league.
Well, occasionally.
Oh, that's so brutal.
Right. It's not optimal, but you're given those choice. Now, does Jerrick McKinnon turning 31 before the season starts, does that play into it? We always talk about age apex. I mean, you've built a brand off it, Podfather. Age 31. I know he's a pass-catching running back, but that is really putting the throttle and seeing steam come out of the engine.
Okay. Jerrick McKinnon has never had more than 159 carries in a season. Okay. He barely has over 500 carries, rush attempts in his career
because he couldn't stay healthy.
He looked fresh all year last year. He's going to be 31. There's no reason to think that he's not going to be the same player.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a 3-day survival where Kansas City adds a Tyjae Spears, then you kind of maybe regret it. But if Kansas City doesn't add anybody, or they add like a late day 3 guy, then you're feeling, although they did hit pretty well on the late day 3 guy last year. In terms of their satellite back, more likely than not, it's Jerrick McKinnon. So I think it's Jerrick McKinnon for this one, Alan, with regrets. But I will throw a late. Hey, give me a 6th round pick for Kirk Cousins, and he's yours. And I bet somebody takes it.
Well, there is the regret factor. I never forget the regret factor in fantasy football. I hate the regret factor. In no world am I like, oh my God, I lost that league. Why? I didn't retain Cousins in that 1 quarterback league. Or like what Theo's talking about, the draft happens, McKinnon signs back with Kansas City, someone grabbed him in the 3rd round of the rookie draft, maybe even sniped you, maybe you were hoping to get him back, and now you're like, have that sinking feeling. You'll never have that sinking feeling. If there was a year for Cousins, it was going to be last year. And what did Cousins give you? 17.9 fantasy points a game. Just write it down.
Yeah, this isn't about Kirk Cousins. This is about, do you want a high floor QB2, or do you want an unsigned 31-year-old, given that he was a league winner-ish type last year? And that's really what it comes down to. It's not Kirk Cousins himself. It's what are the other options. Now, when we're talking FFPC, guys, we're talking about tight ends, and another tight end who was left for dead in the player profiler rankings should now be getting a boost this week, guys, and that's Irv Smith signing with the Bengals. So let's start with you, Podfather, and then Theo, I want you to really to give us an understanding what his value will be in FFPC. But Podfather, where are you guys going to be putting him now? Irv Smith, that is, after an unproductive career, still had that high draft capital when he was taken a bunch of years ago, gets a second chance as the Bengals tight end.
You can't make this up. You can't make this scenario up. If you're an Irv Smith fan, you can't even dream a better scenario than this. This is the ultimate resurrection. He's back, baby. He's back. I think that you put him in that Zach Ertz tier, right? Zach Ertz, Mike Gesicki, isn't he in that world where the resurrection tier?
He could, depending on how the draft goes, he could be even higher. Like he could gain more value after we get through the NFL draft too, because he's in such a good situation right now. It's funny because Cincinnati, maybe this is where guys go to gain dynasty value. Like last year, Hayden Hurst signs with them and signs a bigger contract this year with Carolina. Another former high draft capital guy who ends up in Cincinnati for like a one year deal. Irv Smith, the guy gets TJ Hawkinson and he's left for dead. And now he lands in, Matt, you couldn't find a better situation for Irv, for him to land on than Cincinnati. I mean, we could have drawn this one up better. And Irv Smith is still a young player. There's a scenario next year where Irv Smith is like a top 12 tight end just based on catching touchdowns in that offense. He's a more talented player than Hayden Hurst. More talented player than Hayden Hurst.
But barely. Listen, this is the team that had to go out and trade for TJ Hawkinson because Irv Smith wasn't good enough. Don't forget about that. Please,
this is true.
Don't chase the situation too much. Okay, his best comparable player on Player Profiler is Eric Ebron. Right? There were people that were trying to resurrect Eric Ebron on the Steelers. Remember that? Oh, he's going to the Steelers. Oh, this is going to be great for him. Remember, this is what happens. But like he washed out, right? Remember we talked about this? We just talked about this with Trey Lance. This is the real life scenario of a non-quarterback washing out and then someone rescuing him, right, and throwing him a life preserver and saying, hey, you get another chance. But the probability is that it's not going to work out in this next spot. That's more likely than not. It's not going to work out. What he has going for him is he's fast. He has that second-round draft capital. He's still very young. He's 24 years old. So there's a lot to like. Of all the reclamation projects, there's a lot to like. There's just like there is everything I just said is the same with Mike Gesicki. Okay? Except Mike Gesicki's bigger. Mike Gesicki's had a more impressive career thus far. Mike Gesicki's going to a much worse situation. So on balance, I'd rather have Irv Smith. But I'm not going to boost him up much higher.
No, but I think you nailed it, Matt. Like Mike Gesicki, if we're ranking tight ends right now and talking about their value in a tight end premium format, like I think a lot of people would take Mike Gesicki over Irv despite him landing in Cincinnati. So you're basically telling everybody that we should kick the tires on Irv in Dynasty because I think you nailed it. I think he's ahead of Gesicki, and I think you can go get Irv Smith for a low offer in still a lot of these FFPC leagues. He's already been cut in so many of these leagues on people that don't wait like a sicko. They don't wait like me till the very last minute to do all their cuts. He's already out there in these rookie drafts, but if he's sitting there on somebody who's at 20 players, he's worth kicking the tires on because I think you painted a path for him to be a tight end too next year.
Yeah, but I mean, top 12, slow down. I'd be like tight end 16, very possible. Yeah, right, very possible. This guy can put up 6 to 9 fantasy points per game very easily. There is a world where he gets, positive touchdown variance, incredible touchdown luck, and gets double-digit fantasy points per game, and then he's in the top 12 conversation because the tight end position is so weak. But there is this influx of players. He's not immune from the NFL draft either. Just because you go out and you kick the tires on Irv Smith doesn't mean you're not drafting a tight end on day 2. The Bengals very much could. So that's another reason why you could argue, Gesicki's in a better spot because there's a much lower likelihood the Patriots draft tight end. But all we care about with Irv Smith is this year, right? All we care about is what's he going to give me this year. That's why his value can't go very high. Like he's not going to get much higher than like 20 lifetime value points. It's not possible. No matter how you want to extrapolate it, because he's already washed out, and he's at risk moving forward.
This doesn't really prohibit anyone from the Bengals from taking a tight end, maybe in round 1. But if the tight ends are there and that's their best player on their on their board, on their vertical board, they're going to take him. I mean, Irv Smith is just basically a life preserver or depth because they lost Hayden Hurst. Don't you think, Theo?
Yeah, no, that's probably the correct approach from a dynasty perspective. But I do think there's a chance that this year he has a very helpful season just based on the situation. And Hayden Hurst had pretty decent touchdown luck last year in that offense. I mean, I think Joe Burrow is effective at finding his tight end in the red zone, and Irv Smith, when healthy, has had a couple of these games where he's been able to be pretty effective in the red zone as well. So it's a nice like for like switch. And I just think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Alan. My kind of takeaway is they at least have a little bit of clarity of what they have at tight end right now. And maybe they're a little less apt to take, a Michael Mayer or a Washington, a player like that at the end of the first round. And that's been a landing spot that people have been kind of circling for a lot of these rookie tight ends. Maybe Cincinnati becomes a little more Bijan Robinson-y or Zach Charbonnet. This is where my mind's at.
Theo, you're the guy with all the credibility. You're the guy with the top finishes in the big tournaments and high stakes, okay? I want to help you maintain your credibility. Okay,
you got pristine...
it, man. Thank God for that.
And you just can't say that adding Irv Smith for nothing makes you less likely to go tight end. Even in the first round. It's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. This is the same reason why Trey Lance is about to drop on the player profiler rankings. Because if a team gives up on you, then there's no guarantees. Wherever you land next, it is a pure reclamation project, and it's like, by the grace of God, am I in the league at this point? That's what all these guys have to think. Once they've washed out once, it's a stain. And you can't, just because a guy came available and they signed him, you don't actually know how Cincinnati feels about Irv Smith.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly didn't have to pay a lot for him.
Yeah,
and you're probably right on that.
He costs nothing. It's just an opportunistic, dented can that they put in their cart. That's not going to stop them if their scouts have been thirsting after whoever, right? Why can't Luke Musgrave?
There you go.
Right? That's not going to lower the scout thirst for Luke Musgrave. Like, you can't. You got to be careful when you start to extrapolate out the fantasy wanting of players we've liked in the past, thinking, oh well, this is a signal that this guy is appreciated by Team X. Not even necessarily.
I'm just trying to talk about Cincinnati, manifest them into taking a running back so we can get all hyped about
I saw you doing that, because then you pivoted to Bijan, and I was like, this is where the agenda really is. This is where Theo's agenda really is. Can we talk trades? Because the whole premise of this show was that we were going to talk about some trades we've seen or we've conducted, and we're now over an hour in, and we haven't even talked about that. This is a failure on Alan. Alan's feel for how to drive the show. He was talking about, oh, you're stuck in the mud. It sounds like you're stuck in the mud. Well, he's getting the show stuck in the mud. Spent a little bit too much time debating whether you should keep Kirk Cousins or not. Like, I looked at what's on the show sheet with your cut decisions, Theo, and I was ready to move on 15 minutes ago. Okay, but Alan's working on it, man. He's working on his feel. He's working on his instincts. He's getting better and better. This is like a sort of it's still an early time in this show's history with Alan at the helm. I am taking control. I am taking the wheel, and we are going to talk trades. And I saw that you did a trade, Theo, involving Kenneth Walker.
I did. It's a love it or hate it type deal. To put a little context to the team, this is a team with a lot of talent and a lot of players. I needed to consolidate, and I needed to get down to undercut day. This is not guys that we would have had like conversations about. It would have been like, hey, why didn't you trade them already? Because that guy you can get, this much value for. So my trade was Ken Walker, DK Metcalf, Trey Lance, who was going to be a cut for me, and a 3rd-round pick. And I got back DeAndre Hopkins and the 101. And to put a little more context into this, Ken Walker is a guy that I probably have more money exposure to than any player in the FFPC Dynasty right now. I added him everywhere last year I could. I was very aggressive trying to get top 3 picks last year, and I have a ton of Ken Walker. So for this particular team, the chance to pivot to Bijan Robinson was something I was willing to overpay for. Running back who I think is going to be worth considerably more than Ken Walker in 6 months.
Yeah, what's an overpay today is definitely not sometimes an overpay 6 months, 8 months, a year from now. So,
Alan, what do you think of the trade?
Well, I don't like it because, but Theo knows this, is that this guy hasn't
this
even
is a weird trade, man.
Right.
It's a weird trade.
DK Metcalf?
So DK Metcalf's another guy where I wanted to pivot off a little bit of DK Metcalf because I have a ton of them. And it last year worked out great. And I
apologize. I shouldn't have let this trade get on the show sheet. I should have deleted it from the show sheet. I should have protected your credibility. This is my fault. This is a weird deal. You had to add all this context. This is not helping anybody at home who has Kenneth Walker. Don't do this deal. Do not do this deal if it's presented to you. Please don't.
Poor Theo.
Bijan Robinson over Ken Walker for me, and it will be the case in Dynasty startups when we see FFPC Dynasty.
But you don't have to also include DK Metcalf.
I think that in some of these leagues, you are having to overpay considerably over Ken Walker to get the 101.
Then don't do it. Then you can just say no. Did you get trade blinders on? Were you locked in? Did you have like a trade lock? Were you on trade lock?
The
Do you
trade
think that's what
started
happened
out.
to you?
No, I don't necessarily think that. I think in this particular league, I needed to consolidate, and it was a chance to. The draft picks don't count against the roster. If you tell me I can get Ken Walker straight up for the one, I'm doing it. And I think that the DK Metcalf piece, there's a chance that DeAndre Hopkins outscores him this year. I think that there's a path for that. I wouldn't bet on it, but it's not going to be so egregious that if the healthy DeAndre Hopkins versus DK Metcalf, it's not going to be like 2 tiers below. It's going to be a guy who can start in my fantasy lineup every week. The chance to add Bijan is something I'm willing to slightly overpay for in these leagues. And I also don't want to be completely pot committed to a certain player, even a guy like Ken Walker, who right now has exceptional dynasty value in many of these leagues. He's worth 2 first-rounders to almost every FFPC manager right now. Things change in the running back marketplace very quickly, and I'm not going to have complete dynasty take lock that Ken Walker is just this infallible guy who's going to have this sort of value every single offseason, or next offseason for that matter.
Here's the piece of feedback, because I'm not going to tell you your trade is right and wrong, because you could be completely right in 6 months from now. But as how I give feedback on this dynasty trade is that this deal will be available for you after Bijan lands. But after Bijan lands, his value can only come down from here. So he's in a great situation. Let's say like Cincinnati workhorse back. This deal is still available to you. But if he lands in a situation we don't like, I'm just going to use New England, for example, then this trade is discounted for you. So I think that's the problem with trade, not the trade itself, because the values could line up, and this clip could be circulating all over social media of Matt telling you you're wrong in 6 months with a big donkey on his head. But as like I said, this deal can only lower. This deal is available to you after he lands, would be my feedback.
Matt, I will also add to you that I made a move to get the 102 in this league earlier in the offseason. So I'm sitting on a Bijan and Jackson Smith and Jigba coming to me with this team, which I'm loving it. I'm loving this team right now. And I have Breece Hall on this team. I have CeeDee Lamb on this team. I have AJ Brown on this team.
Are you trying to win this year?
I think I'm still going to have a chance to win this year, despite making this move. I think that Bijan is going to score. We talk about landing spot. I think there's few landing spots that I see for Bijan where he is going to really, not be able to provide back-end RB1 numbers for me. And I think that there's a chance that he could finish in the top 3 at the position this year. I believe that much in the talent. And I'll say this, guys.
Was there any way Was there any way to trade the 102 for the 101?
I haven't seen a 102 for 101 trade go down. I did see a 104 with like a massive package for a 101 go down with a well-known, very successful, high-stakes FFPC player. He traded the 101. He has a team that's that can't, and this is another great subject for us in another week. Certain teams cannot take on Bijan Robinson this year. If you are not ready to compete, it's kind of difficult to take on that workhorse back. How big is your window to the championship? So this team basically said, I don't have a window to the championship this year. I'm better off taking a massive package. Part of it was the 104, but I haven't seen too many 102s for 101s go down in FFPC leagues. It's just such a tier break.
Imagine a world where you have Bijan, you have DK Metcalf, and you have Walker.
Yes, I agree with you on that. But the 102 was not enough to move up, because I think right now Ken Walker is valued more than the 102 by most managers. There's some managers trying to pivot to the 102 for Walker because they agree that he's at this potentially peak of his dynasty value. I've seen certain managers do it, but you need to trade a little bit more on top of the 102. But there's that tier break is just so massive between 102 and 101 for some of these managers. I legitimately think when we see our first high stakes dynasty startup ADP from FFPC, I think it's going to be Bijan at the 103. I just think that's the way the world is headed.
Let's crowdsource your fate here, Theo. Let us know in the comments right now. If you're watching this on YouTube or if you're watching in the live stream, did Theo get hosed or is he a genius trading for Bijan Robinson? Just to repeat the trade, he traded away DK Metcalf and Ken Walker, essentially. There were some other little pieces, and got back Bijan Robinson. That's the crux of the trade. So
he got Bijan.
Did he
Hey,
win?
he got Bijan. Hey,
Or
listen,
is he going to go broke making deposits for the next 5 years? Let us know.
I don't question this deal. Theo knows what he's doing. He's in a lot more leagues and has had a lot more success than I have. The context matters. This is also about portfolio management, knowing his exposure to Walker. I get it. I get it. It would have been nice if he got a little bit more in return or gave up a little bit less. That's all I'm saying. But I understand the premise of what he's working on. It's right. It's right. You don't want to be overexposed. But Alan, don't you believe in Kenneth Walker as more than just a grinder back?
Yeah, I mean, he had a game. I mean, think about this. We talked about a little bit how people think of Ken Walker as a player that just doesn't catch passes. You know, the Nick Chubb comparison often comes up. When he was at Michigan, well, right. I mean, he had
the Nick Chubb dynasty value comparison comes up, where post Nick Chubb rookie year, you saw the massive dynasty spike in his dynasty value, where he's sort of been the same player. This past season, Nick Chubb had his highest rushing total ever, but you haven't had like that, break fantasy type year from him. And that's just my argument with Walker. And for anybody listening, again, Ken Walker is the player that I have probably the most money invested in. So Matt, we hate to necessarily throw like financial terms into dynasty all the time, but if you have a ton of one company in your stock portfolio, you like to be able to, like you said, money management and be able to pivot. And I think I'm pivoting potentially up, whereas a lot of Ken Walker deals, you could be pivoting down. You think of a guy like, you could pull off a trade where you're pivoting to a Jonathan Taylor who's just coming off a season where he suffered injuries. We have question marks about the offense. Or I could pivot to the unknown, but a flawless prospect. So that's just sort of my take. But I do, for the record, I am a Ken Walker guy, and especially in Dynasty. I think he's going to have a terrific career.
All right, Theo hates Ken Walker, everybody. Mark it down right now. And also, just keep in mind, in about a half season of play, Ken Walker did have just shy of 30 receptions. I mean, I think a full season projection, conservative, is 38 to 42, and it wouldn't be a surprise at all if he eclipses 55. So I think Ken Walker is a non-traditional RB1 in Dynasty rankings, whereas He's not clear cut. He's not LaDainian Tomlinson. He's not 24-year-old Christian McCaffrey. He's just one of a guy in tiers, but he's almost too big to fail. So that's why I like it. But I think you made a compelling argument on both sides, guys. Let's go to another trade that we saw happen in high stakes this week. And that was a Josh Allen trade in a Superflex league that's also tight end premium. I'm going to slowly dictate the sides of the trade, and then I'm going to hear you guys weigh in. Josh Allen on one side. The other side, guys, it was...
Is this a Superflex league?
Superflex and a tight end
Josh
premium.
Allen side.
Yes.
So it's so here we go.
Josh
guys.
Allen.
All right, you don't want to. This came from our friend Jordan McNamara over at Football Guys.
I'm guessing Jordan took Josh Allen.
He did, but hear it out. So it's Deshaun Watson, it's Dallas Goedert, and it was a 2024 first round pick random. So let's just call it pick 6. So again, Josh Allen on one side, you have Watson, Goddard, and random 24 first.
Oh boy. Well, this got interesting.
The 2024 first thing is a real argument because it's hard to see the Josh Allen team, giving you the 101. I know you're not going to get a Caleb Williams team out of this unless there was an injury, but you also have, Drake May, and you have a wide receiver prospect who's a better wide receiver prospect than anyone in this class, including Jackson Smith and Jigba with Marvin Harrison Jr. So we like the 2024 class. So that kind of makes it interesting. I don't know though. To me, I think, Matt, your initial response was probably to the correct one because you're getting a top 2 dynasty quarterback, and you can't really, even if we paint a perfect picture where this manager ends up with, the 2024 105 plus Deshaun Watson plus Dallas Goedert, you're still giving up Josh Allen, where I just can't do it. In Superflex, it's so difficult to give up a Mahomes or an Allen. Paint the picture, Matt. Paint the this other side.
We have a trade analyzer on the Dynasty Deluxe package on Player Profiler, and we also have the app, Dynasty Dominator app. There's a trade analyzer that uses
I'm going to plug it in right now into the app,
and it's close. This isn't crazy, right? Sometimes you see analysts that have a particular dogma, right? That they're like, okay, this is my approach, and I'll just always just get Josh Allen at any cost, even if it's a massive overpay. It's actually really hard to overpay for Josh Allen in a Superflex league, which is what's protecting Jordan in this situation. And this is pretty down the middle. Deshaun Watson wasn't good last year. Something may just be wrong with Deshaun Watson. He was supported by a healthy Will Fuller for a period of time, and DeAndre Hopkins in Houston. He does not have anything close to that level of weaponry now, though we are hopeful that Elijah Moore is, at least the slot version of Will Fuller. Theo, what does the trade analyzer say in Superflex?
It's a clear win for the Josh Allen side.
Yeah.
This is the best app. This is the best trade analyzer app you're going to find anywhere. The Dynasty Dominator app. I use it for all of my trades. Josh Allen gets 648.73. And I also plugged in our tight end premium. It was so easy on the Dynasty Dominator app to switch to tight end premium scoring here and Superflex. Took me 1 second to switch to it, Matt. So when the tight end premium in Superflex, Josh Allen 648.73 total trade value. Deshaun Watson, Dallas Goedert, and a random 2024 first only gets 510.94.
Yep.
I'm going to go
close,
change it to the
but it's a clear win for Josh Allen. Thank God for my initial instincts. Initial instincts have been...
I'm going to change it to the 103 in 2024.
What's the word I'm looking for? Oh, no! Oh my God!
Clairvoyant on points.
No. I have redeemed.
Does the format, Theo, maybe drive the decision here too? Because in FFPC, where you have to keep the lineups consolidated, where they're not as big, but you've played in some of these sleeper leagues, some of these MFL leagues, where you're starting 3 receivers plus 3 flex, and then you have 30 bench, which you keep forever, where depth is key. Would that swing the table a little bit to the other side?
Theoretically, yes. it would be more valuable for me to take those guys on a 30-man roster than a 20-man roster. There's other factors, though, like number of teams in the league. Matt brought up his 16-teamer. Like in a 16-teamer, having that elite quarterback makes an even more larger impact for your team. But I don't know. To me, I still want the sure thing elite asset in Superflex. You just cannot replicate that. And Matt, I even changed it to the 2024 103. So this could be Marvin Harrison or another quarterback who leaps Harrison, or a running back next year. You're the best one in the draft. And it only changes the trade by like 20 points here. So that's
because Jordan's teams are not going to be the 103 anyway. It doesn't matter. It's clearly Josh Allen. And here's why. And this is something I've been talking about for 5 years. So many dynasty managers are closet masochists. They love pain.
They love to
and
lose.
They welcome uncertainty and risk, to the point that if they were a portfolio manager, if they were working for Goldman Sachs, they would be fired. The risk management department would come to their desk and say, "Pack up, buddy. You can't do this with our money." We have these guys for their whole career in Dynasty. You have no idea what that draft pick's going to be. And we currently don't have much of an idea what the hell Deshaun Watson is. So Jordan's offloading all this risk, and he's getting a super premium, impossible to replicate asset. Can't replace that, right? You lock him up for the next 5 years, put him on the roster, throw away the key.
Yeah, it's really hard to paint a picture the other way. You know, if it was 224 firsts, maybe I would think about it. But for a single random one, it's just not happening for me.
That's the show. I do That's the show if I don't have easy access to the end screen.
What allows you a good cut point for editing. Right?
Bye, everybody. Hey, you like that video? Be sure to subscribe and activate those alerts so you get notified as soon as new videos drop. And be sure to check out playerprofiler.com. We have all the tools for you to dominate every type of fantasy league. We have a draft kit, Dynasty Deluxe, data analysis, DFS Dominator, and don't forget the player rankings to rule them all.